Hi, I'm Caoilte O'Connor. I'm a developer. I've worked on 2 continuous delivery projects now, and I'm going to talk today about how continuous delivery has framed our relationship between developers and operations. My first continuous delivery project, really the situation was ops and dev, separate world, separate environment. We built a deployment tool on top of this firm foundation, what we thought, this configuration management system, but in actual fact, we're really constrained by Conway's law. What we had was organizations which were constrained to produce designs, which were copies of the communication structures. And right there was our organizational divide. Dev at the top and ops at the bottom. We were producing tools. It was shared config between the 2 different environments. And that meant that ops had to learn both tools. And basically, to recap, the situation was we didn't actually work as a team. Ops were working in one environment, we were working in the other environment, and it wasn't a great place to be. You are doing it way past than 15 seconds. Is it me, or have we spent longer on this slide than every previous slide? My second project had embedded ops from day one. It was a lot like this. We really had to fight to get it, and it was tough. And that meant that we had the right tools, though, and we could use them all the way through our system, and that was great. So looking back at from the previous diagram to this diagram, we had a single configuration tool and deployment tool, and meant we could worry about other problems, like, for example, the fact that developers think differently to operations. Developers assume things would work. Ops knew that actually things don't necessarily work. This is a great slide by Mark Burgess, which summarizes that cultural divide between dev and ops. Dev just assume everything can be perfect. Ops know that in the real world, everything goes wrong. A practical example might be a pipeline, for example, and that's what we're going to look at in a bit of detail. In a continuous delivery pipeline, you really want to push changes through your system, but ops are used to managing systems that pull those changes down, and how they interface together is really problematic. So if we look in detail at how the configuration management systems tend to pull changes, they tend to have timers on nodes that poll a config database and pull down those changes. And that's simple enough and works well for the setup that you generally have in operations. Whereas when you want to push changes via a deployment pipeline, your client over there would be that deployment pipeline, and your nodes over here, and the same nodes that could be pulling changes via the config management system, there's more going on. You have to orchestrate all of those nodes working together. But at a node level, it's still pretty simple. The squares are roughly commands that you're going to execute, and the diamonds here are queries to see how things are going, how your deployment is. In reality, though, the interface that we had between a deployment system and a config management system, we ended up with a much more complex workflow. This is it. We don't need to really focus on it, but you can see there's so much going on because we're trying to mediate that push and that pull, both happening at the same time. To look in more detail, the real problem is that what if a deployment is already running because of the config management tool running on a timer, and when we trigger a continuous delivery pipeline, first we have to check to see if it's running, because we can't use it if it is. It's probably using the wrong version of our config. So we have to wait until it finishes. Then we have to stop the cron, or the timer that's running, executing the job, and only once that is confirmed as being stopped can we run the delivery pipeline. What we've essentially built is a bit of a hybrid. We've taken a config management system that works well in a traditional ops environment, and we've bolted on the front of it a pipeline. We've made it work, but is it ideal? Well, it doesn't matter too much because we're learning. We've done this for thousands of deployments now, and we're always talking as a team, dev and ops, about how it can work better. And we're even improving it. We're now exclusively pushing in one environment instead of pulling at all, and we'll soon have testing of those push changes of config binaries, not just the artifacts, the applications that we're releasing. So in conclusion, be careful with your tools, because what I've discovered on various projects is that it can be great and it can work well, but it can also reinforce your anti-patterns and really work hard to get cross-functional teams with ops embedded in your team. Because although you'll continue to make mistakes, as we have done and I've talked about, you'll also get the opportunity to learn from them. Thanks very much.